It's 10:30 on the 30th of September, and I'm uploading for the interest of those that are responsible for creative intellectual property theft from the southwest of Ireland. As is evident, I'm suffering damages from circumstances of Hippocratic offences that have been caused as a consequence of unsuitable living conditions in a democracy that is still living off legislation from me that is still unpaid for. So there's been a lot of false reporting. I've been contending with a lot of slander. I have been contending with defamation and people being really intrusive and not observing royal protocol and really disturbing the peace for quite a long time and being disruptive to privacy and private lives in stalking, stealing and slandering tendencies. So these people have been speaking out of place. They have been disruptive. They've been stealing my belongings, my creative intellectual property. So I hope the art world is aware of the pillaging from Southwest Ireland that I'm experiencing and how unsafe the art world is by these people that are in the broadcasting and media of a circumstance where they've been a poor PR and poor messages and very dangerous violations of privacy, discussing people out of place without permission and without respect for whistleblower protection law, without respect for international protection law, without respect for humanitarian protection. This is outrageous what's going on in this community, but it's nothing new. It's the same kind of people speaking out of place and bringing the legislation that has originated from me into a very unsafe territory with damages to the Hippocratic Oath still an unresolved issue. So the people that are responsible for stealing from 18 Rock Street, that have been corrupting the system and that damage the system and that are speaking out of place about royalty that they have no permission to be discussing, are really making children and families unsafe since unlawful care orders of my child. These people have been really juvenile, irresponsible and very rude. They've made people really unsafe taking my son from me in January 2017, and they're still causing problems. They're still ASBO, they're still unwanted, and they are still in debt. So this is a message for the IMF and the ECB. I need urgent assistance to be removed from these people in this community that are stealing. I need to remove the items from my apartment at 18 Rock Street from those that have been stealing as well. And the issue of people taking from creative intellectual property makes everyone really unsafe again. So this issue is quite outstanding and astonishing that people would support ASBOs that don't pay their debts, that work with unlawful child care orders, that do false reporting, slander of character and defamation and make everyone really unsafe, and that pillage from my intellectual property of COVID-19 and Brexit. So those people that are speaking of me and that are causing harms to me and damaging my health and well-being while living off COVID-19 should really be careful about, as I've said, the debts that they owe me. As I've said, there's been 2 decades of blood, sweat and tears of very honest, arduous research and recovery, and all of that is not supported by anyone putting their name to any legislation that has originated from my professional portfolio. So I really would be honoured and grateful if the IMF and the ECB would help me address the culprits of corruption in County Kerry. As I've said, I've worked with the Victims Support Federation and the Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship, the hope of cleaning up society, and yet here again in County Kerry there's still people speaking out of place and still spending money they don't own. So those that are benefiting from the legislation of me and my credentials have still a lot of debts outstanding and owing to my name and are not safe spending money they don't own. So those that are discussing my name and that are antagonising and disturbing the peace and supporting contamination in society are not within the remit of the law. So those speaking, again, as I've mentioned, out of place in support of crimes that are of contamination in society are advised not to mention or speak or relay falsehoods or slanderous comments about people of my calibre with legislation, crime prevention and social justice and reform. So as again, the advice as before, the IMF, ECB are being alerted with regard to unsafe wealth circulated as a consequence of stealing and theft from my entitlements and earnings, and the state of Ireland still has legislation to pay for. It is not supported without proper conduct and proper practice. Any false reporting, any aggravated assaults that I experience, or any crimes of contamination that I contend with or tolerate that are ever supported by any justice department puts the children at risk. And there are already children after being put at risk as a consequence of unlawful care orders of January 2017. So everyone's being really kind of irresponsible and senseless with regard to the nonsense and stupidity of people that are in the art world that don't have any integrity while stealing from a woman, a mother, and a law abiding citizen of royal descent. And then in the meantime, we have this beautiful publication, a guide, step by step guide, no less. For displaced Ukrainians residing in County Kerry. I'd like to remind the Ukrainians of the documentary I've put together, It's Sad Sign of the Times, and the Ukrainians might have a review of what has been happening and what I have been experiencing and bringing into existence with all the circumstances of mentally disturbed individuals in society that are still stepping over lines and speaking out of place and stealing innocent hard-earned cash and living off legislation that I do not support them to be using from my credentials, qualifications of nearly 2.5 decades. So this is just for the IMF and the ECB. More corruption is going on. More people are speaking in false reports and defamation of character, and more Hippocratic offences are still being conducted. It's a very dangerous time for people to be conducting more crime with all their debts unmet. As I've said, COVID-19 from me and Brexit is at risk, and that's serious. So it's a sad sign of the times.